Life is the most honest employer you will ever work for. It doesn't cheat. It doesn't play favorites. It simply pays you exactly what you ask of it, and not a penny more. Napoleon Hill taught that the tragedy of life is not that people aim too high and miss, but that they aim too low and hit. If your income is small, if your opportunities are limited, if your results are mediocre, it's because whether you realize it or not, you have been asking life for exactly that. And the only way to earn more is to raise your demand. The truth is, most people have been negotiating with life from a position of weakness. They accept less than they're capable of, and they accept it early. They settle for jobs that don't challenge them, relationships that don't fulfill them, and routines that don't grow them. And every time they accept less, they teach life that this is their price. Life says, if this is all you're willing to work for, all you're willing to fight for, all you're willing to demand, then this is all you will get. Napoleon Hill understood that life responds to definiteness. If you show up without a clear target, without a clear demand, you will wander from one thing to another, always busy, but never building anything of value. But when you set a clear demand, when you tell life, this is what I will have, this is the level I will operate at, and I will not accept less, something powerful happens. You stop drifting, you start moving with precision, and the world, piece by piece, begins to bend in your favor. But here's the part most people miss. Life will test you before it pays you. The moment you raise your demand, you will face delays, detours, and disappointments designed to see if you mean it. Most people fold here. They think the struggle means they're on the wrong path, when in reality, it's proof they've finally set a price worth paying. The payment is on the other side of the persistence test. Fail it, and you go back to asking for scraps. Pass it, and you collect the full reward. And here's the secret. Raising your demand isn't about arrogance. It's about alignment. If you believe you were created for more, you dishonor yourself by settling for less. If you believe you have talents and gifts that can serve the world, you dishonor them by keeping them buried. Life is not offended by big demands, it is offended by wasted potential. When you look closely, you'll see that life has already been paying you according to your own terms. Your current lifestyle, your current opportunities, your current level of success, they are the paycheck for the level of effort, vision, and persistence you've been willing to give. If you want a different paycheck, you must first change the work you're willing to do and the value you're willing to bring. Napoleon Hill taught that the marketplace, whether it's for your skills, your ideas, or your leadership, does not reward wishes. It rewards value. And value is always tied to the size of the problem you solve and the persistence with which you solve it. If you're asking life for more money, more freedom, or more influence, you must raise the value you offer and the standard you hold yourself to. Otherwise, you're just asking for something you haven't earned. But here's the twist. Most people are not underpaid by the world. They are underpaid by themselves. They work at half speed. They give up at the first obstacle. They avoid the uncomfortable actions that would actually move them forward. And yet they expect a full reward. Hill would say, you can't expect a harvest from seeds you never planted. Life is fair in this one way. It gives back in exact proportion to what you put in. And when you truly raise your demand, something shifts inside you. You stop tolerating wasted time, wasted opportunities, and wasted energy. You stop letting fear negotiate you down to a smaller goal. You stop making deals with mediocrity because you understand that mediocrity cannot pay you in abundance. Every choice you make becomes a reflection of the higher price you've set for your life, and your behavior begins to align with it. And here's the most important part. Life will not argue with you. If you demand more and you're willing to work, it will pay you. If you demand less and you're willing to settle, it will pay you that too. It doesn't care what you choose. The choice is always yours. The question is, are you bold enough to set a price that scares you and relentless enough to keep working until life pays it in full? The danger of asking life for too little is that it quietly shapes you into someone who accepts too little. You become accustomed to scraps and start calling them meals. You lower your expectations to match your results, instead of raising your results to match your expectation. And the longer you live like that, the more it feels normal, until one day you can't even remember what it felt like to want more. Napoleon Hill warned that the great crime of life is not failure. It's surrendering your potential without ever testing it. Most people never find out what they're truly capable of because they've never put in the sustained, relentless effort required to collect full payment from life. They stop too soon, not because they couldn't earn more, but because they never demanded it long enough for life to deliver. Here's the truth. Life is a mirror. If you approach it timidly, it will reflect timidity back at you. If you approach it boldly, with a clear, uncompromising demand, it will reflect that boldness in the form of opportunities, connections, and reward. But you have to understand, life's mirror doesn't just reflect what you want, it reflects what you insist on. That insistence has to live in your actions, not just your words. You can say you want to be wealthy, but if your habits reflect the mindset of someone who's broke, life will pay you accordingly. You can say you want influence, but if you hide from responsibility, life will withhold it from you. You can say you want freedom, but if you cling to the security of a comfort zone, life will chain you to it. When you raise your demand, you raise the cost you're willing to pay. That cost may be long nights, difficult conversations, repeated failures, or a season where the reward hasn't shown up yet. But if you stay in the fight, life will match the price you've paid. And once you've proven to yourself that you can collect at that level, you'll never again settle for a smaller check. When you truly understand that life will pay you whatever you ask of it, you stop envying those who have more and start studying them. You realize they're not lucky, they've simply set a higher price and refused to come down. They've been willing to work longer, endure more, and persist beyond the point where most people quit. They've made peace with the fact that the bigger the demand, the bigger the sacrifice, and they've decided it's worth it. Napoleon Hill knew that life is never stingy with rewards. It's simply exact in its calculation. If you've been paid small, it's because you've asked small and delivered small. If you want more, you must first become more. That means sharpening your skills, raising your standards, expanding your vision, and refusing to entertain opportunities that don't match the value you've decided to create. But here's where most people hesitate. They fear that if they raise their demand, they might fail. They'd rather aim low and succeed than aim high and risk missing. But in doing so, they guarantee a life of small results. Hill would say, if you must fail, fail while daring greatly, because even a failed attempt at a higher goal will leave you stronger, wiser, and closer to the life you want than a lifetime of hitting easy targets. And here's the unshakable truth. Life does not decide your value. You do. The world simply responds to the price you set for yourself. If you carry yourself like your time, your work, and your presence are cheap, they will be treated that way. But if you demand that they be respected, valued, and compensated according to the highest standard you can deliver, and you consistently deliver at that level, life will meet you there. Once you've experienced that, something changes forever. You'll stop playing small, not because someone told you to aim higher, but because you'll have proof that there's no ceiling except the one you accept. And from that point on, every time you look at your life, you'll know that it is nothing more and nothing less than the exact amount you've been willing to ask for and earn. Once you grasp that life is only paying you according to the check you've written in effort, persistence, and value, you stop blaming luck, timing, or other people. You start asking yourself better questions. Have I raised my skills to match my ambition? Have I been consistent enough to deserve the result I want? Have I allowed setbacks to lower the price I'm asking from life? These are uncomfortable questions, but they are the questions that create growth. Napoleon Hill taught that the man who sets a definite price for what he wants will eventually be paid in full, but only if he refuses to lower it when the world pushes back. This is where most dreams die, not in the lack of opportunity, but in the quiet surrender to a smaller demand. People tell themselves they're being realistic, but in truth, they're negotiating away their potential for the comfort of smaller effort. And here's the hard truth. Life is under no obligation to give you what you're capable of. It will only give you what you demand, and your potential can remain locked inside you for decades if you never put it to work. The world will not come knocking, begging you to use it. You must step forward and claim the value you've decided to create. When you finally raise your demand and match it with action, you'll start to see the shift. The same opportunities that once passed you by will begin to open to you. People will start to treat you differently, not because they've changed, but because you've changed the way you show up. Your energy, your confidence, your clarity, It all rises to match the higher price you've set. And the best part, once you've been paid at that higher level, you'll never go back. You'll know exactly what it took to get there, and you'll know that you can do it again, maybe even more. That's when life stops feeling like a gamble and starts feeling like a game you know how to play. And the only limit left is how high you're willing to set your next demand. The greatest danger in life is not asking for too much, it's asking for too little and getting it, because when you receive less than you're capable of, it teaches you to live below your potential. You adapt to a smaller life, you shrink your vision to fit your result, you convince yourself that this is just the way things are, and in doing so, you close the door on the future you could have built. Napoleon Hill warned that life will never pay you beyond the value you demand and the value you deliver. The question is not whether you can achieve more, the question is whether you will raise your standard and sustain it until life has no choice but to match it. Most people never find out what they're truly worth because they quit negotiating too soon. They let the first rejection, the first failure, or the first dry season convince them that their demand was too high, when in truth they were inches away from being paid in full. And here's the truth. Raising your demand is not about greed, it's about responsibility. If you have the ability to do more, to serve more, to create more, you have the obligation to step up to that level. Settling for less doesn't just rob you, it robs everyone who could have benefited from the full expression of your talent. Life is not offended by ambition, it's offended by waste. But the higher your demand, the more precise your actions must be. You can't ask for premium results with bargain-level habits. You can't demand excellence while tolerating mediocrity in your daily routine. Life will always check to see if your behavior matches your request, and it will adjust your payment accordingly. Once you prove that you can sustain the discipline, focus, and persistence required for a higher price, the world will begin to meet you at that level. And here's the best part. When you've earned something at the highest standard you've ever set, you carry that confidence with you forever. From that point on, you know that there is no limit except the one you place on yourself. And every new demand you set becomes another level you will inevitably rise to meet. Once you realize that life will only pay you what you demand, you stop making casual requests. You stop saying "I'd like" and start saying "I will." You stop treating your goals like optional desires and start treating them like contracts that must be fulfilled. That shift in language is not just talk, it changes your posture, your decisions, and your persistence. Napoleon Hill understood that the man who says "I will" with conviction is a different man than the one who says "I hope." Hope is passive. It waits, it asks for permission. But "I will" is active. It assumes the outcome and takes steps to claim it. Life responds to that certainty. It may not deliver instantly, but it will not deny the one who has proven they will not lower their price. The real challenge is holding the demand when nothing seems to be happening. This is where most people break. They start high, but the moment results are delayed, they begin to negotiate with themselves. Maybe I don't need that much. Maybe I can live with less. Maybe I was asking for too much. And with every concession, they teach life to give them less. But if you can hold the demand through the dry season, if you can keep showing up, keep delivering value, and keep pushing at the same level even when there's no applause, you'll cross an invisible threshold. That's when life begins to pay you at the rate you've been demanding, because you've proven you can sustain it. And once you've been paid at that level, you won't need to convince yourself you can do it again. You'll know. You'll have the proof in your hand. And that proof will be the foundation for every higher demand you set from that day forward. From then on, your life stops being a game of chance and becomes a game of choice, because you've mastered the law that life will pay you exactly what you ask, no more and no less. When you understand that life is simply paying the bill you've written in effort, skill, and persistence, you begin to take full ownership of your reality. You stop blaming the economy. You stop blaming your upbringing, your environment, or anyone else who didn't hand you what you wanted. Because you see clearly now, life has been fair all along. It has given you exactly what you demanded, exactly what you earned, and exactly what you tolerated. Napoleon Hill knew that this realization is both liberating and terrifying. Liberating because it means you have the power to change your results at any moment by raising your demand and matching it with action. Terrifying because it removes every excuse you've been leaning on. Once you know this law, you can no longer hide behind the belief that life is holding you back. The only thing holding you back is the size of the check you've been willing to write with your action. And here's the paradox. Raising your demand doesn't just change what you get from life, it changes what you expect from yourself. You begin to move differently. You stop entertaining opportunities that don't meet your new standard. You stop spending time with people who settle for less, because you understand that low expectations are contagious. You start building habits, relationships, and routines that are worthy of the price you've set for your future. The truth is, the moment you raise your demand, your old life starts to feel too small. The comfort zone you once defended begins to feel like a cage. The excuses you once believed now sound hollow, and the people who once kept you company on the sidelines begin to drift away. Not because you've abandoned them, but because your pace, your vision, and your persistence have pulled you into a new arena. That's the real reward. Yes, life will pay you more in money, in opportunities, and in influence. But the deeper reward is the person you become in the process. The kind of person who doesn't lower their price when the world pushes back, who refuses to negotiate away their potential, and who collects in full because they've earned it in full. And once you've become that person, there is no going back.